Perfect.
Sorry, boys. I just had to change into something more comfortable.
Perfect.
That's beautiful. That's really beautiful.
Comfortable.
For video only fans, you need to find a YouTube or find what Joe is wearing right now. For those who are
It's
listening,
his
audio
robe, right,
only,
Craig? Tell the history of the robe.
it is the Ric Flair Nature Boy Joe robe, which has followed him through WrestleManias, through decades of wrestling events,
Joe,
through Anaheim.
I think it was made in like
that
92?
93 or 94? 93, right?
I want to say that I made this in '93. Yeah, like so. I mean, a little bit of morbid story, I guess. I suppose. Like this was my grandmother's robe that she made. The velvet magenta robe. I then had my mom sew because I was 13 or 15 and didn't know how to sew. Had my mom put white feather boas on everything. We put some little puff paint on the back, and the Ric Flair robe was made. You know.
So when we did the R Wrestling Federation, the OWF, we actually wrestled in my backyard. We built a legit 19 by 19 foot ring, and Joe was the Nature Boy. Joe, last name, I don't know if I want to say that, but he was the Nature Boy. And this is the robe that he wore in 1993 and on when we did wrestling. He graduated college and put this robe on and walked across the stage in this robe. So it's an honor, Joe.
What's up, guys? Our wrestling podcast back at you with another episode. This is Dave Vicious along with Jess, the Total Package, Craig, the British Bulldog, Nature Boy Joe, and Cuz, giving you our perspective on the world of professional wrestling. No inside sources, no ties to the industry, just stories from the diehards, sharing opinions with you. Can someone feed me today's topic?
Dave, we're gonna
propeller
do it.
of doom.
We're gonna do it, Dave. We're gonna do the legacy of Ric Flair. If you can believe that shit.
Whew. This is gonna
I don't know. I know we've already debuted you on the podcast, but I wanted to do this for Joe because I knew we were gonna have him on, and I was disappointed with our 100th episode review, and I own that 100%. It has nothing to do with anybody on this call. I hated the Hogan legacy.
Brother.
I hated the Stone Cold legacy because I left out obvious stuff. And so I shied away from the big legends like Hogan, Flair, and Austin because I was like, and I don't even want to talk about The Rock because I was like, there's no way we can do it. And I don't want to do a 3-hour episode or a 4-hour episode. It's ridiculous. I don't want to do two-parter anymore. We did two-parter with Randy Savage and I liked it, but it was okay. But so I've been, this is all me. It's not you guys. It's all me. So I said, you know what? I'm going to redo. And when I knew Joe started wanting to come on the podcast and do everything, and we did a Clash of the Champions review with him, and I was very happy with that. I was like, I want to do the legacy of Ric Flair, and I want to reinvent the way I do legacies. So that's why I decided to do this. And I'm excusing Dave for this, and I'm going to take over the ride of this one because I want to guide this, and I hope this is going to be the new format, so that way big legends like Ric Flair and Hogan and all them, we can do this and not torture you for 4 hours. That's my goal.
For audio fans, give us a listen on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and Google Podcast, or watch our videos on YouTube at our wrestling channel. Can you also do us a solid and give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter at O.W.P 2019 or on Facebook, soon to be Meta, at Our Wrestling Podcast. That's always going to make Cuz laugh. I love it. He's a big Meta fan. Cuz can't wait to join. It's one of his favorite.
Are we gonna fucking do this? I mean, I'm gonna take.
Are we
the reins
really
on this
gonna go there?
I gotta prove this thing. So the main thing that I changed about the way I wrote this legacy was it's going to promote more involvement from you guys rather than going from beginning to end. He was born here, he was born there. We're going to do some of that stuff. But instead of going all the way in chronological order, I'm going to break it up into like topics, like his early life, his world championship wins, why he got some of his nicknames like the 60-Minute Man, things like that, his greatest feuds and who they're with, and then we can fill in the blanks here. So I am going to go in chronological order, but I'm not going to go, religiously like we always do, bam, 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 like all the way down, and then do a fucking 9-hour episode.
You can't do it with Rick.
This easily can do that. So I'm going to jump in. I only relieve Dave, not because Dave is not the greatest host of all time, because Dave is the greatest host of all time, and he belongs in that role here. Fuck you, Dave, even though you get that. So I want to guide this for the first time, like I much did the Hogan episode, and I want to try to reinvent our legacy. So here we go. We're going to start in the early life of Richard Morgan Flair, which was his adopted name. He was born on February the 25th of 1949 in Memphis, Tennessee, not Charlotte, North Carolina, folks. His real name was never fully realized. He was adopted, as I said before, although it's believed his real name was either Fred Phillips, Fred DeMari, or Fred Stewart. Nobody really knows. But one of those three names is the real name of Richard Flair.
No computerized records back then, folks.
No. Right. So now we're going to jump to, he was a really good amateur wrestler in high school, by the way, but he adopted the ring name of Ric Flair, spelled R-I-C, last name F-L-A-I-R, and debuted for the AWA of all promotions on December the 10th, 1972. He was also trained by Vern Gagne.
Take your pills, Chris.
He was the whatever. He was also trained by Vern Gagne. We know what pills that is too, by the way. He was trained by Vern Gagne, who was the owner of the AWA, and it was the same training camp as the Iron Sheik, Ken Patera, Jim Brunzell, and the son of Vern, Greg. He also made appearances in 1973 for the AWA on talent exchanges. In 1974, he left the AWA for Jim Crockett's Mid-Atlantic territory under the NWA umbrella. And we all know that's kind of where he made his name. His first title was the Mid-Atlantic Television Championship, which he won from Paul Jones in 1975. On October 4th of 1975, Flair was involved in a plane crash that almost ended his early career. Also on the plane was Johnny Valentine, who was paralyzed for life. Mr. Wrestling, who was badly injured, but checked himself out of the hospital that night as to not give his identity away, because that's how people protected their professional wrestling careers. He did not want the press to know who he really was or see him without the mask, so he checked himself out of the hospital after a fucking plane crash.
That seems dangerous.
Crazy. It's fun, totally normal, Craig, whatever. Bob Brugers and David Crockett were also on that plane. The pilot died on impact. Flair broke his back in 3 places and was told he would never wrestle again and would have limited mobility. However, Flair said, "I don't like that." So he conducted a rigorous physical therapy schedule and came back to the ring just 3 months later, where he resumed a feud with Walt McDaniel in January 1976.
And the plane crashed and killed the pilot. He lived for a year but never regained consciousness. Valentine paralyzed from the waist down.
Well, break this down for me, man.
Oh, I forgot. The other guy in our class was Bob Bruggers.
Okay, Bob Bruggers last night. I guess the plane was going 230, 260 miles an hour.
When it hit the ground.
Stop.
Yeah.
Sudden stop.
Yeah.
So there, the plane crash happens.
Yeah. Well, the speedometer on the plane,
yeah,
when it crashed, was stuck at 230. That's how fast we're going down.
Okay.
3 months later, he breaks his back.
So
he comes back.
I just want to give you a breather, Jess, but we always talked about this, and Joe might be able to give us a little bit more insight on it too. But I always see this kind of like an adhesion on Flair's back has to be from the plane crash or something around it. And I always believe that from this point going forward, Flair never takes a bump straight on his back. Whenever he goes up high, he always takes it on his side every single time. Probably prolonged his career, plane crash or not. But I wonder if that's part of it. And Joe, maybe you can kind of jump in on that. What do you think?
I mean, that's definitely that definitely had to have an impact on it. I mean,
but no true insight on that, right? Like we don't know for sure. I mean,
if you read
it has to be true.
Like most like insights on it, Flair had a different style of wrestling prior to the plane crash that he did afterwards. Okay. Prior, he was a little bit more of like an aggressive, like brawler style wrestler. Afterwards, it was definitely more of a like pseudo technical wrestling, a little bit more heelish.
I think that's crazy, more right? Because most wrestlers
a little bit more of like a selling persona as opposed to like an aggression or like an offensive persona.
I think that's crazy because like most of the time the selling personas are a lot more physically demanding on the heel, whereas like a brawler. Usually when guys get older, they adopt the brawling technique or whatever because they're like, well, I don't want to leave my feet. I don't want to take a bump. I don't want to do that. And they do the brawling. So Joe, that's a great call out because I was like thinking the same thing going like he went the opposite. Like he went like the opposite of what a guy with an injury should do. He went to more of a salesmanship and more of a bumping guy.
Well, and like, and that might have been the fact that, like, you know, like as a seller, like you, like if you're selling the moose, you have a little bit maybe more control over what you're doing, you know. So it's like, yeah, you're giving yourself, like, you have to trust the other person, but like you decide how you fall, you decide how you take the bump, you decide how, you know, like you have maybe a little bit more control. It is about the only idea that I can come up with that, like, at least of like what I've read with like the books and like the you know, the other kind of like insight stuff that that kind of deals with that topic.
And that makes a lot of sense. Like, even, I mean, heels traditionally called it in the ring anyway, but Flair was always known for calling it anyway. So maybe that was partly part of it too, is he protected himself, heel or not, calling it and making sure he controlled it.
Yeah,
and like Joe said, he would adopt a different ring style when he came back from the injury. He would adopt the style of the Nature Boy, and he took on that nickname that was flamboyant, confident, and he loved the ladies. So after this, I just want to jump right in now to his World Championship wins. In September of 1981, Flair defeated Dusty Rhodes to win the first of his 10 NWA World Heavyweight Championships. He basically owned that title from 1981 to 1991. Flair defeated Harley Race to win his second NWA World Championship at the first ever Starrcade, November the 24th, 1983. I think that, like, to me, like, that should have been his first.
And the referee in trouble right now. Here's Flair up on the top rope.
He's got him down. 1, 2, 3. He did it. He did it. Ric Flair has done it. No question about it. Ric Flair has just defeated 7-times World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race. And there you see it, and I'm not even sure that Flair is even aware. Yes, he is. You can tell now. He realizes it. His goal has been reached. His great achievement in life in winning the World Heavyweight Championship.
Like,
that was definitely his coming out party. You know, like, I mean, I believe that his first run was as a heel, and the second run was as a face. And so, you know, he's beating Harley Race, who was at that time 7-time world champion or 6-time world champion, whatever it was. Harley Race, super heel, you know, like, and I remember watching this 83 Starrcade match.
Well, and there was it was, Joe, not to interrupt, but it was before WrestleMania. A lot of people consider WrestleMania the first supercard. It was the Crockett promotion and the NWA that put on the first supercard, a Starrcade. 1983. Like, that was their big deal.
That was a big deal. That was the first that was like essentially the first pay-per-view event ever for any wrestling.
For wrestling. Yeah.
Wow.
And you know, after like Flair definitely got like a hero's welcome on that. Like, I mean, all of the faces came out of the dressing room to come out into the cage. His wife came out, his kids came out. I mean, he definitely had a very Ricky Steamboat kind of moment, which I didn't.
You like Ricky Steamboat, correct?
I didn't really
Don't start.
Even as a Flair fan, I didn't appreciate the Ricky Steamboat moment with like the kids and the crying and the wife and, you know, whatever. I like,
and the horses.
You know, nobody likes that sort of thing.
And the donkeys.
Like a donkey with painted stripes on the side of the
rails.
Terrible. But yeah, so I mean, I think you're right in terms of like that was like his big moment. I mean, that, and I think that was the NWA saying like, hey, we're gonna, like, it was a passing of the torch from Harley Race, who'd been carrying the mantle for, you know, 6-7 title runs, to Flair. Hey, we're giving you, we're gonna go with you.
And not to get too far crazy off track with the stuff, but, you know, on the other side of the world of wrestling, with Vince, it's one man making this decision who's going to go over. For Flair to get to this position, this is a committee in a sense saying this is our guy. He has to kind of sell everyone over to make this happen, which in my opinion is much harder to do. And for him to own that for the upside of 10 years, because he's bringing them into a whole nother stratosphere of success and money and booking. It says a lot about Flair really early on in their career of what he's established.
That is a great point, Dave.
Pretty impressive.
We are going to get into that. It's a very good point. He would lose the belt to Dusty Rhodes, Kerry Von Erich, and Ron Garvin over the next 3 years, but ultimately regained the championship in the rematches, which is, earlier I said, he basically owned this title for the entire decade.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner and new World
heavyweight champion, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes.
On May the 7th, 1989, Flair would regain the NWA World Championship and begin his 7th reign by defeating Ricky the Dragon Steamboat at Wrestle War in 1989. He lost the belt to Steamboat 3 months earlier at Chi-Town Rumble, which Craig thinks is every WCW pay-per-view from the early 90s and the late 80s.
It's true.
And he did that on February 10th, 1989. So we're going to talk about Steamboat later, so I'm going to put a bookmark there. So trust me, we're going to get back to that. He would win his 8th world championship, which was the record at the time, or actually I should say tying Harley Race, by defeating Sting at a WCW house show on January the 11th, 1991. In the middle of that run, the NWA would withdraw from WCW and strip Flair of the title, thus making Flair the first ever WCW World Heavyweight Champion. On January the 19th, 1992, Flair would win his first WWF Championship by winning the Royal Rumble and winning that title, which was vacant from the Hogan Undertaker match a couple months earlier. So I want to pause right there. Because I don't put that much. We need to put emphasis on the fact that Flair goes to the enemy territory. We're going to talk about Flair.
This is amazing.
We're going to talk about him a little bit later and what he meant, to where I think that Flair really garnered his name as the anti-Hogan and the anti-WWF. But here he finally goes to the WWF in 1992 and wins the Royal Rumble, which is one of their cooler marquee matches. And he wins the vacant WWF Championship. So this guy, for years, was the anti-Hogan. For years was pitted against Hogan in Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazines and all the media and the Dave Meltzer magazines and all that stuff, and the newsletters, all that stuff. And now he is in the WWF, and we'll talk about it. I want to hear you guys' comments on here because I know we were in my fucking living room when this happened, and my heart was broken. My heart was broken to a million pieces. But he wins his first ever WWF World Championship, which was really like it was a really big deal. I know people look back on it now in 2021. Everybody knows wrestling's predetermined and they give the titles out and whatever. But back here, for some reason, this hit differently. Joe, in 1992, when you told me to go fuck myself, and I don't know if that's the exact words that you used in my living room, when Flair won the title. How did you feel when Flair won the WWF Championship?
And looking from behind. Oh, Justice got rid of Hulk. Uh-oh. I don't like the looks of things now. There are no friends. There are no friends. Only enemies. Oh, is Hulk upset? He said, "You've stolen my belt." What the? And look at this. Hulk's there, holding on, trying to pull him out. It's Flair from behind. Oh, yes, 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 yes. Flair did it. Yes, yes, yes. And again, I told you myself. I told you myself. I told you. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes, yes. Yes. Yes, yes, I told you.
I mean, as a Flair fan, there was definitely like a vindication, like there was definitely like a validation of wow, like because there was always this like who's better, like is it NWA, is it WWF, and then what was the better promotion, what was the better organization, was it was it characters and storyline, or was it wrestling and like realism, and like what was better? And I feel like everybody kind of fell into two camps. And I think Flair, I mean, then there was always like people like crossing back and forth between the two promotions, but I think Flair crossing over was the first time. I mean, and even like, I mean, Dusty Rhodes.
You're talking about a main eventer.
Dusty Rhodes crossed over beforehand, but like never really raised above a mid card. So he doesn't necessarily, I wouldn't necessarily count him, but like Flair crossing over and leaving the world champion and then going over and becoming the world champion of the next organization.
Bringing the belt with him.
And bringing the belt with him on top of that was a huge deal, was a huge like spike. I mean, especially for Vince to be like, I mean, Vince had generally won at that point, but like to then take the competition's best person and their belt and bring it over and then put his belt onto him and then have that guy say, this is the only belt that matters. I mean, that promo that he cuts after the Royal Rumble is iconic.
Legendary, yeah.
I mean, it's unreal. I mean, it's just, I mean, like, no, everything I've done, everything that I've become, this is the thing that matters.
All right, by virtue of winning the Royal Rumble, we have a brand new World Wrestling Federation champion as the press watches on. At this time, to present the title belt to the new champion, our president, the distinguished Jack Tunney.
Congratulations, Ric Flair, on becoming the undisputed champion of the World Wrestling Federation.
Let me just say, after viewing distorting the belt, they're proclaiming the real world champion. I'm going to tell you all, with a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment in my life. When you walk around this world and you tell everybody you're number one, the only way you get to stay number one is to be number one. And this is the only title in the wrestling world that makes you number one.
Yep.
Way bigger deal.
Yeah. So because you were born in 1992, tell me what you're younger than us, cuz. So like what is your first memories of Flair actually? Because when you came to WWF, you started WWF, right? I turn you on to WWF originally?
Yeah, and that was like in 88 or 89 when you did, and I actually seen this. I don't remember if I was actually there with you or if you had brought the tape over to our parents' house, but I actually remember seeing this at that time. And obviously it's funny because I'm sitting there not realizing the significance of it with Flair coming over to WWF. But I do remember the Royal Rumble. Royal Rumble became one of my favorite matches because of that match, actually. And a funny thing too, he was actually in the I'm just saying this part because I know he went back to WCW right after. He was actually in the WWF Royal Rumble game that came out on Super Nintendo in '93.
He was, yeah. Yeah, it's true.
It's a little random.
I was gonna always bring the game piece into it. Love that.
Oh, it's a little fun fact,
Yeah.
Craig, I know Craig, I'm pretty sure you were in my living room, I think, during Royal Rumble.
I'm sure we were. I mean, it's 30 years in January that this happened, right? 92. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And even now, 30 years later, you can see we still say the sayings. We still say, put that cigarette out. We still say, tear in my eye.
Yeah.
You still remember the intensity of Flair when he's walking down the ring. Bobby Heenan. It's the greatest kind of, I mean, it was all about Flair that entire night, but it was the greatest presentation of one man coming in and telling that story and being the longest entrant. It was pitch perfect from beginning to end, and it holds up. I mean, holy shit, we're old 30 years.
Yeah. So on July the 18th, 1993, Ric Flair would defeat Barry Windham to win his 9th NWA World Championship at WCW Bash of the Beach 93. This was a watered down version of what the NWA title used to be. We talked about it before.
Still counts, Jess. Still counts.
It does still count, yes, because the NWA board brought it back. So they brought it back in 1992. Masahiro Chono would win it from a tournament. The Great Muta would defeat Chono. And then Barry Windham would defeat the Great Muta at Super Bowl 1993 in February. And then Flair would come back to the promotion. And after his no-compete clause wore off, he challenged Barry Windham to win his 9th NWA World Championship at WCW Bash of the Beach, like I said. At Starrcade 1993, Flair would defeat Vader to win his 2nd WCW World Championship.
Oh, down he goes!
On March the 14th, 1999, Flair would win his 3rd WCW World title by defeating Hollywood Hogan at Uncensored 99. Those are his most notable title defenses. We're going to talk about it.
You're up to 13 now, right?
We'll get to that in the end or whatever. Oof. But I left some of them out. Of course, I skipped over the Garvin and blah 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 and all that stuff. Not that that's not important.
I'm with you. I'm just counting the numbers.
Yeah. There's a huge dispute as to how many titles the man's actually won. We'll get to that later. Now I want to get on to his nicknames: the 60-Minute Man and kind of the anti-WWF Hulk Hogan guy. Due to the demanding nature of the NWA World Championship, Flair developed a style that would allow him to go from territory to territory and highlight their top talent. In other words, like Flair had to go to Florida and take on Butch Reed. He had to go to the Carolinas and take on the Junkyard Dog. And I'm not shitting on those talent, but Ric Flair as the champion, as a heel, had to develop a style that would go into each territory around the country and be like, okay, I'm not going to lose the world title necessarily. I mean, he would lose it to, Von Erich and stuff like that when it made sense. But like he would have to defend the title, and it'd be a lot of 60-minute matches. It'd be a lot of DQ schmozzes and all that stuff. But you think about it. Think about his everyday lifestyle. He wrestled every single day of the week. He even said twice on Sundays most of the time. So he'd wrestle 8 times a week. You got to fit travel into that shit. You had to somehow fit partying and gym work into that shit. So he had to go. We don't remember that. Well, we do, but I'm talking about like in general as fans today in 2021.
Yeah.
We don't remember what the territory style was like. It was very different. When we grew up with WWF, we were accustomed to this bubble, and Vince accustomed to this one thing. It's just one promotion. That's it. We have one champion. The NWA was legitly a territory that would go state to state, territory to territory, and Flair was the universal champion, but had to put their local babyface or whoever over. So he had to go there and fight a Junkyard Dog who, I'm sorry, no offense, rest in peace, was not the caliber of a Flair or somebody like that. But Flair had to go and make that 20-minute or 30-minute match a barn burner, and it somehow ended in a draw or disqualification. And to make you want to get tickets to come see him when he came back around in the loop. And that's so, that's why he got the 60-minute man Monkier, and he got like the territory master kind of nickname from that point, because that was the difference from Hogan and the championship in WWF versus Ric Flair. He had to go around the loop. It was so many, we don't remember that anymore. And I say we, I don't necessarily talk about the people on this call, but we as fans in 2021, there's a lot of people that don't remember what the territories were about.
It's all about the chase, where like WWF was like, it was Hercules. It was, WWF was Greek, like Greek mythology. It was Hercules battling monsters, Hogan battling monsters every night.
Yeah.
Where NWA was the heel, or like the bad guy just outsmarting or just escaping the good guy every single time, and and that's what kept you coming back the next time. You're like, he's gonna get him next time. He's gonna get him next time.
And every 6 months to a year they would.
Now I want to go to his feuds and matches.
There we go.
And the first thing I want to bring up here is Harley Race. I think that's a guy we should bring up for Flair. Flair's most important world title, in my opinion, came from Harley Race. It highlighted Rick on the first annual Supercard, which was Starrcade. I mentioned that earlier. Both shared the same worth ethic and passion for being world champion, which I think was important. And that set the tone for Ric Flair's reign over that 10 years. The feature matches that I think you should go back and watch from Flair and Race is the one from Starrcade 83 in November. Go back and watch that. I think it's worth talking about. The next opponent that I want to mention from the Flair legacy is Dusty Rhodes. I think their chemistry was literally made for each other. Rhodes was the common man, the every guy face, and then Flair was the dirty, rich heel. He was fucking limousine riding, jet flying. He was the piece of shit. Their chemistry was so made for each other. Flair was the natural antagonist to Rhodes. The fact that they did get a little jealous of each other behind the scenes further fueled their rival on screen. Great matches that you guys should go and watch is from the Great American Bash 1986. Jesus Christ. Great American Bash 1986 of July the 26th, where Dusty Rhodes would defeat Flair for the title. However, Flair would shortly win it back. So the next feud I want to talk about and the next opponent of Flair is, I know Joe and I make jokes back and forth. However, we do got to get a little bit serious about talking about this rivalry. It's against Ricky Steamboat. And their rivalry began over the U.S. title back in 1977. That's the year I was born.
Only Craig was alive.
That's ridiculous.
The year I was born, they were fighting over the United States Heavyweight Championship. In 1989, Steamboat came to the NWA and challenged Flair for the NWA Heavyweight Championship. From February to May in 1989, they gave us 3 matches that are still talked about to this day, and it's like a measuring stick. The matches you should watch from Flair versus Steamboat is from February the 20th, 1999 at Chi-Town Rumble, Craig's favorite pay-per-view. On next match is April the 2nd, 1999 from Clash of the Champions 6. Their 2 out of 3 falls match. And May the 7th, 1999 at Wrestle War in 1999. To me is the best of the 3 matches and widely regarded as one of the greatest wrestling matches in American history. And then also worth noting, April 17th, 1994 at WCW Spring Stampede. Not one of their best matches, but still, how bad are you going to get when you're talking about Flair and Steamboat? Really, like, I know Joe and I make jokes back and forth, but these guys were fucking made to wrestle each other. Like,
with all due respect to the jokes that you guys make about Steamboat, it's pre-match stuff. It's bringing in too much.
Joe hates donkeys. Let's start off with that. And ponies.
That's true. I don't.
Joe has
like
a thing
donkeys
about
or cowboy hats.
Showboating your kids before the match starts has everything to do with it, right? So, I mean, Joe, in all seriousness, has a problem with like strutting in your kids and trying to make your kid a part of the story. It's like, no, like it doesn't need that for one. But then when the bell rings, I'm sure there's nothing to joke about with that. And it's Ricky Steamboat. I mean, I haven't seen Rick Steamboat lately, but I feel like he can go right now. I really do. Like, we saw him wrestle.
Yeah.
I saw him wrestle 20 years after he retired, and he was still, coming off the top rope and doing what he does. And Rick Steamboat is a worthy opponent of anyone. Macho is amazing, but they have one of the greatest WrestleMania matches ever still in the show. WrestleMania.
I've been talking about that, Dave. Calm down.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, Rick Steamboat's out there. Rick Steamboat is one of the greatest people to have the honor of wrestling, and Ric Flair and Ricky together is just it's pure gold, man. They're amazing.
Steamboat's got him up. A slam. But Flair inside cradle 1, 2. He did it. Inside buckle. And Flair has done it. Flair has done it.
Ladies and gentlemen, the winner, and for the 6th time, World Heavyweight Champion, Nature Boy Ric Flair.
They started in 77, so you figure two decades later, it all culminated into the best series of matches, maybe professional wrestling history. 2 decades of working together, and they're kind of both at their peak. And much like Dusty Rhodes, you have kind of good versus evil, hardworking family man, humble humility versus Flash, Nature Boy, bang anything that moves, jet flying. So it's very similar, but the same to Dusty Rhodes. And Flair could tell any of those stories. It was so easy for him to morph into whatever story you want to tell him from a heel standpoint, and to watch those styles where Dusty was a big boy and it was elbows and brawling back and forth. Steamboat was a completely different set of matches, as who could out cardio each other, who could out wrestle and out technical, and just
how many roll-ups can you get?
Yeah, it was, I mean, just gorgeous wrestling that if you lived through that period, you were lucky to see it and to watch and to be eager to watch 60-minute matches.
Their Wrestle War 89 match, May the 7th, 89, to me is like, I can still watch that this day and be like, Jesus Christ. Like, these guys just know, they understand what each other's going to do. They don't even think about it. Like, it's just, it's art.
I'd wonder how many times they faced each other over the years, house shows, whatever.
Well, Flair, in his book, Flair said, the funny thing is so many people herald the 89 War Games, Wrestle War match is the best match. Flair's like, we had matches on house shows that no cameras were rolling, only the live audience saw, that were 20 times better, several times.
Yeah, I have
like,
no
Jesus
problem
Christ,
that.
like, I can't even think about
destroyers back then, huh?
Yeah,
just having fun.
So I want to go on to another opponent of his, and it's Sting. Flair has called Sting his greatest opponent. I disagree. I think Steamboat is his greatest wrestling opponent, but I'm going to listen to the master Ric Flair, and he says Sting is his greatest opponent. Flair made Sting's career in so many different ways. Their rival began at the first Clash of the Champions in 1988 and continued until WCW was bought out in 2001. They wrestled each other on the very first Nitro in 1995 and the very last Nitro in 2001.
Oh, that's right.
It's over! It's over! Sting wins! Sting defeats Ric Flair here on the final telecast of WCW Monday Nitro on TNT. And look at that! My God, he's gonna help him up in an embrace. This is what we're all about.
There's so many. The matches that you guys should go look up is March 27th, 1998, the first Clash of Champions. It was a 60-minute draw. July the 7th, 1998, the Great American Bash, where Sting won the heavyweight championship from Flair.
Here comes Flair, going for the figure four. Sting's got him, inside cradle. Can this be all? Yes! A new heavyweight champion of the world has been crowned. Sting has upset Ric Flair to win the heavyweight championship of the world. The Stinger has done it. The Stinger has done it.
Flair, September the 4th of 1995, the very first Nitro ever, and March the 26th, 2001, the final Nitro. Sting definitely deserves a place. They did gel together well. Flair made his career. And Sting has said that on so many different occasions. He's like, dude, Flair made me. Like, there's no way. From the first Clash of the Champions, that hour draw with the green guy, not only did that show that Flair was fantastic, but they put that clash, like I said earlier in our previous episode,
against WrestleMania,
up against WrestleMania 4. And so they were so confident in a green Sting against a pro like Flair in an hour match. And they tore the house down. And
Flair's confident too in it, not just
yes.
Amazing. You see the book,
and they got a massive rating. So Sting absolutely has a place. You guys' thoughts on Sting?
Not even a question.
Well, I think that looking at those last three opponents, and looking at Flair's response to that Sting is his best opponent. I mean, that might be the case. I think that Steamboat might be his best technical opponent. The best in-ring work was actually Steamboat. You look at Dusty Rhodes. I think that Dusty Rhodes and Flair, their best work wasn't in the ring. It was their promos against each other.
Yes.
You thought this through, Joe.
All of their common man versus wealthy man. All of that stuff is amazing. Where Sting, I think, is a hybrid of both of those things. Sting wasn't as good as Steamboat in the ring, and he wasn't as good as Dusty on the mic. But
better overall.
I think the fuse they had over the decade or whatever that they did was captivated the generation, really. That they could put on amazing matches, and they could have promos that went back and forth and that sold everything. Because let's face it, Steamboat on the mic is not so good.
Why are you going back to the Steamboat? We're talking about Sting.
Yeah, Dusty in the ring, not so good.
Sting was good, but he
was an amazing hybrid of those two styles, and I think that's why I can see Flair saying that was probably the best opponent, was because he got the best. That was the best money.
Yeah.
So let's go on to the next opponent, Lex Luger. I wanted to throw in there.
Luger. Sorry.
It's a perfect example of how Flair knew how to play to his opponent's strength. I think Luger was a perfect representation of what Flair did in the territories the decade before. Flair made Luger's career in a lot of ways. We talk about how he made Sting's career. I think he made Luger's career in a lot of ways too. The notable matches was July 10th, 1988 at the Great American Bash, December the 26th, 1998 Starrcade, and May 19th, 1990 at Capital Combat. I don't want to go too long in Lex Luger, and I don't mean that to be rude against Luger. We've actually played tribute to Luger on the legacy of Lex Luger, and we've talked about him in past. We've talked surprising matches against Brian Pillman in past episodes. But Lex Luger, to me, deserves a point in Flair's legacy. That was a big deal for Flair.
Did he ever take a title off Flair?
Negative. No, and he should have. I think he should have.
You can move on.
The next match I want to go to, the next opponent, I should say, is Terry Funk. Amazing that these two wrestlers never really clashed until '89. Funk, a former NWA World Heavyweight Champion, back with his brother back in the '70s, and they never really clashed with each other until their 1989 match. So they had it's kind of a trilogy. It was Great American Bash, a tag match at Halloween Havoc, and then their final match at Clash 9 in the I Quit match. To me, that's still amazing, that match. The psychology should be studied by wrestling schools everywhere from that match. Notable matches from that feud: November the 20th, 89, the I Quit match is the match you should go and see. Great American Bash 89 is great as well, but I think you should watch the I Quit match. Real quick, you guys want to talk on that, or you want to keep going? No disrespect against Terry Funk or anything like that.
No, I love Flair for kind of bringing Terry Funk to a wider audience. I think here, I think
good
this
call.
was the
That's a great.
I think that's a great. I think that's a great assessment.
This was the beginning of where Terry Funk kind of got his immortality and could walk through the smoke a little bit and become someone that was known, I think, in the locker rooms and stuff. But and I said it in a previous podcast, I love these unorthodox matches that Flair had with Funk. But it also led to Funk's kind of ECW, kind of reckless, and then Chainsaw Charlie, and then what he is now, just this unstoppable legend, and man who will never die.
He's wrestling tomorrow somewhere, I heard. I think.
Yeah, he probably is.
I'm just playing.
He's wrestling with life, Dave, at this point.
Yeah.
Hey, whoa.
And that's a good, right? I mean, what a life he's lived, right?
Yeah.
Old buddy can barely walk. All right.
He's retired like 20 times.
Just those knees. All right. That's bone on bone.
The next opponent is somebody I probably should have saved till last, but I'm going to bring him up now.
You can cut to this.
It is Hulk Hogan. Although they never lived up to the hype in our own minds, and let's face it, you know, the magazines and the dirt sheets hyped them up so great in the 80s, you know, and they finally clashed. Flair and Hogan they clashed quite a few times, but they never lived up to the fact that the great debate, who's better, Hogan or Flair. I think you have to look at their body of work and then give your opinion on that. You can't look at any one match because they were like oil and water a lot. And
they couldn't work well together.
You didn't think that, you know, they faced each other at house shows in the WWF in late 1991, but never on pay-per-view.
What a nice short left, huh? No, there's got to be more to it than that. 2. Right, Hulkamania dead, McMahon. Woo! I can't believe that. Wait a minute, we can check that out. From my vantage point, I can see. No. Yes, look at that. There's something in the back of his tights. Mr. Perfect handed something up. Ladies and gentlemen, there's definitely something there. Here is your winner, Ric Flair. There's the real world champion, McMahon. I love to hear that. The winner, Ric Flair. Woo! Can't believe this. Ric Flair. Wait a minute. Officials coming in. Wait a minute. They found it. They were in the touch of Flair. They found it. There it is, Rick. There it is. No. No, that's not right.
Hogan and Flair.
Because Vince saw the house shows. That's why.
Yeah, well, I mean, they were good house shows, but not, oh my God, house shows. Hogan and Flair was used to introduce Hogan in WCW, which I think was the best strategy that Eric Bischoff had, to be honest with you. Flair was one of the main reasons why Hogan agreed to come to WCW in the first place. Matches that you should go back and watch was December 29, 1991 in a Madison Square Garden house show. It's on the old school archives in 1991. It's just kind of cool to see Hogan and Flair fight in WWF. And then July 17th in 1994 at Bash to the Beach in 1994. To me, that was probably their best match, if you had to name a best match. October 23rd, 1994, WCW Halloween Havoc in Steel Cage. It was a retirement match. February the 21st, 1999, WCW Super Bowl 9 was another good match. And then another notable match which Flair would win the world title from Hogan, like I said earlier, at Uncensored of 99. You know, arguably the two biggest wrestlers of the 80s and 90s. I can't say any of these matches stand out.
I was going to say, you have a lot of recommended matches for Oil and Water. And
well, for sure, but I think you have to give it to
their matches to go back and like, you know,
it's Hogan and Flair,
check out,
and
like,
yeah, it's amazing to me. I think I had the most matches because of the fact.
Yeah, I'm gonna go watch something else.
Well, that's fine. That's fine.
You do that, bud.
You should go back and rewatch Flair. You should go back and rewatch Flair and Funk and give it a fucking A. You fucking weird.
You know what's
I'm still mad about
a lot of
that.
people forget about.
Wait, but Jet, let me ask you a question. I guess to the group and to you especially, Jess. Like, I think what would have happened if we would have seen Hogan and Flair WrestleMania 8, and how would that have changed history and maybe that match if you would have?
I don't think it would not have added any quality, but I really truly do think that it would have added more to the validity of their. I think it would have somehow put a period on the end of that sentence, feud. It would not have been a better quality match for sure, but I think it should have happened. I think that it just shows the balls on Vince, right? I think we always say, what a mistake, when I hear people say that. A lot of people nowadays will say, what a mistake. And I'm like, dude, it just showed the balls on Vince. Vince is like, I don't need that. Like, in other words,
I don't think it's
with the steroid trial and all the stuff that was happening at the end of 92 or the beginning, at the end of 91 and beginning of 92, Vince knew these guys in their fucking 40s are not going to save my promotion or redefine pro wrestling. I pulled Flair over to stab WCW. That's all I did. And he brought the belt on my show. That's all I fucking wanted.
And everything then he eventually said that Flair was too old. And
yes. Exactly. Everything else after that is incidental. The fact that I put him in the Royal Rumble, great, sounds good, whatever. He just did what he had to do, and you put him in a good feud with Savage, which we'll talk about later. And so I think that, to answer your question, Craig, not much, but I think it would have given us a little bit of an ending to the story. I know that sounds funny. I just think it would have done something. It's WrestleMania.
I mean, don't you? Yeah, like I agree. Like that match. I don't care. Like, who you are or what you think about wrestling. If you were a wrestling fan in the late 80s, early 90s, like Flair versus Hogan should have happened, but it should have happened at WrestleMania.
Yeah.
It should not have happened at Bash at the Beach and like front of like a bullshit set of fans like that were like half there and half not there, and like that gave a weird pop because it's fucking outdoor and like on the beach or whatever. I mean, that shit should have been in the Coliseum. I mean, like if they wanted to sell out 100,000 people or whatever, like like whatever, if they wanted to sell out a huge event for WrestleMania 8, it was 8, right? Yeah, WrestleMania 8. That should have been Hogan and Flair. And I don't think, to the life of me, even if it had been oil and water, how many matches in the history of wrestling have been oil and water? Why not put that match like? Why not put that match like up in front in WrestleMania?
Cuz go ahead. Cuz was literally born on this year.
No, you got a Cuz?
No, I was gonna say is that they actually it's probably really under the radar, but they actually had a match on WWE TV, Monday Night Raw. That was their last ever
in
match against each other. WWE Championship match.
Yeah.
Just a little
little tidbit there. I just want to
ending to their
little feud that they have.
I think that we should have seen, egos aside, a Pat Patterson produced WrestleMania main event.
100%.
Change the game. Because Rumble 92, just seeing them kind of face to face for the first time and touching each other, like what have you, looking at each other.
That should happen.
Drama. You give me a pattern. You figure it out in the ring. I mean, figure it out beforehand, the story, and a Patterson produced.
And it was, by the way, I mean, we've talked about it before. The graphic was put up. The original main event for Mania 8 was Hogan and Flair. It was the graphic that was put up. And then something happened. Hogan and Vince had a shitty relationship and it fell apart fast. And then they separated it and it became Savage and Flair against Sid and Hogan.
I appreciate it, but we're going to move on.
I get you, brother.
I want to lead into Randy Savage, which is another one of Flair's big feuds.
Much better. Much better.
Who actually Flair jobbed out to in the same fashion that Dave disagreed to, that Hogan should beat him.
But that's different. It's completely different.
But their feud was a classic tone. And here's why I loved Flair and Savage. Flair pushed Savage's buttons always. Like there was never, Savage was so easily rumbled. All Flair had to do was be like, I want to fuck Elizabeth. And Flair was like, what the fuck is running? And he would just lose his shit. It didn't matter. Like Flair, all he had to do was say, I have pictures of Elizabeth. I smelt her underwear one time. I like the shoes she's wearing. Like everything. And Flair would just push his buttons. They saved some cards that would otherwise have been forgettable. There's so many times that Flair wrestled Savage and forgettable cards, but because they were on the card, I was like, I want to watch that again because of Flair and Savage. Their notable matches was April 5, 1992 at WrestleMania 8 for the WWF World Championship. It was a really fucking good match, and it's one of the best WrestleMania matches you should go back and watch for sure. Absolutely. June the 18th, 1995, one of my personal favorites at the Great American Bash, WCW. It was for no world title. However, I don't know why I love this match so much. It was fucking great. It was physical. Flair and Savage always put emotions on the line. And by the way, in the early years of Nitro, Flair and Savage wrestled all the time for the WCW Championship and traded back and forth. And like, I really believe that Randy Savage and Flair, that feud is super underrated. They had some of the funnest matches, and they really lit up WCW for me.
We should have been talking about this feud way more than the Hogan.
That's why I said I kind of wanted to leave Hogan for last to talk about. Was it a fart or was it a good thing? But I'm glad we talked about this. So
why has Randy Savage not surrendered? You've got that look on your face too. You've got the same look on your face. You can't believe it. Randy Savage against all odds. But wait, what's he doing? No. Randy Savage. He's blacked out. I think he's unconscious. Savage is unconscious. We did it! Woo! We did it! We did it! We did it! Perfect! You did it! Larry, you did it! With good wrestling ability! And oh, am I happy? Am I excited? Yes, yes, yes! Oh, we're in the money! Yes, sir!
About this. So now I want to go to the factions that Flair was a part of. Let me tell you here. So I'm going to bring up the Four Horsemen is the obvious faction. Flair, by the way, I don't think anybody will disagree on this podcast. Flair is the Four Horsemen. He's been a part of.
There's no Four Horsemen without him.
He is one.
He has been a part of every single version of the Four Horsemen. They were formed in 1985 with Flair, Ole Anderson, Arn Anderson, and Tully Blanchard, and they were managed by J.J. Dillon. The final version of the Horsemen was in 1999. So they went all the way from 85 to 99 with Flair, Benoit, and Malenko, and Arn with the manager. All the Horsemen include, I'm going to give you a full list of the Four Horsemen here. Ric Flair, Ole Anderson, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Lex Luger, Barry Windham, Sting, Sid Vicious, Paul Roma,
Best Horseman.
Brian Pillman, Chris Benoit, Dean Malenko, Steve Mongo McMichael, Kurt Hennig, and Jeff Jarrett, sort of.
One day.
Who do you think was the best four of the Four Horsemen? What was the best four incarnation?
Oh, the best four set?
To me, it was
the best incarnation.
I think Cuz is going to agree with me on this one. It's going to be Tully Blanchard, Arn Anderson, Ric Flair, and Barry Windham.
Yeah.
Joe?
Okay. Of the actual incarnations that occurred, I agree 100%. Tully, Arn, Flair, and Windham. But if you could do a fantasy booking of the Horsemen.
That's what I was going to say.
No. Of the ones that are in?
Of all the names right here.
Who would be the four that would be the best?
Of all the generations? Fuck.
Of like from start to finish, of all like the 14 members or whatever.
Oh, okay. So they have to have already been Horsemen, in other words. Okay,
so like, you know, I mean, from Mongo, you know, I mean, you could make the best
from 85 to
Flair,
99.
Mongo, Ole, and Sting.
Okay,
that could be your best. That could be your best lineup.
I want to do Windham, Sting, and Benoit.
And Flair. Obviously,
Flair has to be in it.
Well, Flair has to.
I'm going to throw Flair out. I'm going to go with Roma, Vicious.
Roma's the best. That's what I said. Best Horseman ever.
Oh, fuck. Craig, I don't know. Fucking save me. What do you...
I'll go. I think it needs Tully, Arn, and Flair, and then I'll add Luger instead of Windham.
Oh, shit.
Oh, snap. Ooh. Damn, that's good.
That's a good one.
Because Luger was never in it with Arn and Tully, right?
No, he wasn't with Arn and Tully, yeah.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
So those four.
Yes.
That's the way you like it.
I don't know. It's such a wild
That's
card.
the way you like it, though. That's fine.
That's fine.
I mean, Flair, Arn, Tully, and Luger was actually a great combination. I mean,
could you imagine the Wyndham and Sting together working that?
Yeah. But then who do you kick out? But yeah, old Tully, right?
I'm gonna vomit. I don't know.
I think if I had to fantasy it, like I mean,
because I view Blanchard and Anderson as a tag team, so that's hard for me to split them. Even though I love Anderson,
it's hard to split them up. Like
it's so hard for me to split them up.
Anderson's been in there without him, so it's not a big deal.
I feel like if Benoit had been born 10 years younger, he would have been fucking amazing. Like that would have been like. I feel like Benoit was like a born Horseman addition, you know. And
so
Malenko, actually, I think Malenko.
Yeah, Malenko's.
I feel like Benoit and Malenko were like the new coming of like Blanchard and Anderson.
I still love my favorite of the Flair, Anderson, Blanchard, and Windham, but I will do Flair, Anderson, Blanchard, and Hennig.
Ooh.
I was actually gonna do Flair, Benoit, Henning, and Wyndham.
Oh.
Yeah, I was close to that one
But
too.
I was also thinking about trading out Henning for.
So excited right now. So
yeah, fantasy booking's always fun.
do.
But Jess, I have to tell you, I enjoyed your next faction probably a little bit more. And
yes,
I
know that sounds weird.
I'm gonna go.
I love this.
A more modern wrestling fan will love Evolution. And
I love Evolution.
It was the inclusion of Ric Flair because of Triple H, so you got to give him credit for that. Even though Flair was way past his prime here, the group was formed in 2002 with Flair, Triple H, Batista, and Randy Orton. Ultimately, the group ended in 2005, but they were a major part of the Ruthless Aggression era. And they split up in between, but there was never any new only those four were always the Evolution. Always.
Think about that for the second, where obviously where we started with Flair's career here in 77, and now we're here to think about that. You can say in the Ruthless Aggression era, guys that made it were like Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan, The Undertaker, Kurt Angle, Triple H.
Batista, not even Hogan so much, Orton. To be honest.
Hogan, what? I enjoyed it.
A little bit, but I mean, like he left, you know what I mean? He wasn't around for a while.
I mean, he had the Undertaker feud. He had the Brock Lesnar match. He had the Kurt Angle.
I appreciate you.
Dude. Yeah.
I mean, Hogan had a lot of matches. I mean, like WrestleMania 18, 19.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Like, yeah, well, I guess you're right. That's Ruthless Aggression. I think Flair could have spanned further.
Remember
Hogan?
Hogan
came
in
2000. Flair lost to Flair lost to Michaels in 2008.
Yes.
I love how
Flair kind of in that match is considered to be still match of the year.
But it's just crazy that roster.
It was
that time period too, though.
I just love how in Evolution Flair kind of becomes the I don't want to say wise man because he's not. I don't say he's old.
J.J. Dillon.
He becomes that guy who kind of whispers in Triple H's ear and then laughs about it. And, goes,
he won tag titles on 2 occasions with Batista.
Batista and the Nature Boy Ric Flair.
Yeah, they carried a lot of gold in this faction. A lot of gold.
Evolution was a really good group, and regardless of Flair being in there, but I think Flair was a great addition. I'm glad he was.
I love that Flair's in there
because I got to keep.
It just made sense.
Yeah, I got to keep that current wrestling audience educated on Ric Flair, and I appreciate that.
And in that current audience, you got to remember that his stuff with Edge was fucking great too.
Yes, no, and that's why. Before we get into the awards and accomplishments in championships, I should say, I want to talk about the number of titles that he has won is skewed. Like the world title that he's won. Yeah, so WWF went back. So before WCW was bought out, they never included the Tatsumi Fujinami victory over Ric Flair in Japan, and then Flair beat him in the rematch at Super Bowl 91. They never included that. WWF did. And I think WWF did that because they always kind of put Cena up against Flair as Cena was rising. They were like, and I think they realized, oh, fuck, Cena might tie him on this title win. And then they freaked out. And then WWF went back. If you go to Wikipedia, it even specifically says WCW never recognized this world title loss, but WWF retroly went back and recognized the title loss and win from Fujinami.
Does that take him to 16, Jess?
Well, it added it more than that, actually. So it's disputed. Flair is in
the 21 or 22.
There's also
Flair's in the 20s.
There's also like Flair lost the title in New Zealand to Harley Race, and then won it in Singapore like 6 days later.
In Cuba,
that nobody counts. Yes. So it's like I mean, there's a lot of like.
There's so many ones. He lost against Carlos Colon in Cuba, but never left because the fans started rioting. So the announcer made up a thing how Carlos won the title, even though he never really did, and just to get Flair back alive because the crowd was going to fucking kill him, like legitimately kill him. Like, so there's a lot of things where Flair back and forth like 6 times that was unrecognized by the NWA back in the day to get him out of territories, which further shows how amazing he was in the territories and how real wrestling was.
How people really wanted him beat.
When it was better.
So I'm going to go here. Let's do the Crockett, NWA, and WCW titles all in one here.
Here we go.
He was the United States champion 6 times, combination between the Crockett and the WCW, because he did win the WCW US title from Conan in 1996. The Mid-Atlantic television champion 2 times. the NWA World Tag Team Champions 3 times, 2 with Greg Valentine, 1 with Blackjack Mulligan. He was the NWA World Heavyweight Champion 10 times. He was the WCW World Heavyweight Champion 7 times, which just between those two was 17. In the WWF and WWE, he was the World Heavyweight Champion 2 times. That puts him at 20 without any altercations, and including the other victories, like I told you guys. So technically, he's 20 times. However,
Who did he beat for the IC title?
He beat Jericho.
Jericho, I think. Yeah.
I think it was Jericho.
Wow, that's fun.
No, it was Carlos. I'm sorry, it was Carlito.
Carlito.
Yes, it was Carlito. He was also the WWF Intercontinental Champion 1 time by beating Carlito. He was the Tag Team Champions 2 times with Batista and 1 time with Roddy Piper, so a total of 3 times. He was the NWA Hall of Fame class of 2008. He was the Wrestling Observer Hall of Fame class of 1996. He was the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame class of 2006. He was the WWE Hall of Fame 2 times, 1 in 2008 for singles and 1 in 2012 for the Horsemen. Now for his awards, for the Pro Wrestling Illustrated, which is our magazine, he was Feud of the Year in 1988 and 1990 with Lex Luger. He was also Feud of the Year in 1989 with Terry Funk.
There you go.
He was the Inspirational Wrestler of the Year in 2008. That's when he won the IC title.
So he won Feud of the Year
he retired.
3 years in a row. That's what you're saying.
Yes, that's when he retired. Feud of the Year, yeah. He retired in 2008, so he got Inspirational Wrestler of the Year in 2008. He was Match of the Year in 1983 versus Harley Race. He was Match of the Year in 1984 against Kerry Von Erich. He was Match of the Year in 1986 against Dusty Rhodes at Great American Bash. He was Match of the Year in 1989 against Ricky Steamboat at Wrestle War. He was Match of the Year in 2008 against Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania when he retired. He won Match of the Decade from 2000 to 2009 against Shawn Michaels. He was Most Hated Wrestler of the Year in 1978 and 1987. He was Rookie of the Year in 1975. He won the Stanley Weston Award in 2008. He was Wrestler of the Year in PWI 1981, 1984, 1985, 1986, 1989, and 1992. He was the Pro Wrestling Illustrated Wrestler of the Decade for the 1980s, like we talked about in a previous episode. He was ranked the number 3 of the top 500 wrestler in the PWI 500 in 91, 92, and 94. He was ranked number 2 overall in the top 500 in the 2003 edition. I don't know who was number 1. I'm assuming.
Don't worry about it. Nobody knows.
I'm assuming it was Michaels. But yeah, in the Wrestling Observer newsletter, he was the best heel of 1990. He was the best promo of 91, 92, and 94. In my opinion, he was the best promo every fucking year.
The heat is on. Here's the world champion, Ric Flair.
The heat is on. You know, I got to have David Crockett over here for this, because David Crockett, the illustrious announcer and vice president of Jim Crockett Promotions, always likes to tell the wrestling public something special when Ric Flair gets knocked down, or Luger gets put to sleep, or Arn and Tully trip over their feet by accident. Come on, David, explain what just happened on national TV to the legend Dusty Rhodes and to Heads of Stone, Ronnie Garvin. What just happened?
He was the hardest worker in 1982. He's the hardest worker in 1982, 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987, and 1998. He was Feud of the Year against Terry Funk in 89. He was Match of the Year in 83 against Harley Race. He was Match of the Year in 86 against Wyndham. He was Match of the Year in 88 against Sting and Clash Champions 1. He was Match of the Year in 1999 against Ricky Steamboat. Their 2 out of 3 falls match, not the Wrestle War match. He was the most charismatic from 1980, 1982, 83, 84, and 93. He was the most outstanding wrestler from 1986, 1987, and 1989. He was the favorite wrestler of the Wrestling Observer newsletters from 1984, 1985, 1986, 1987, 1998, 1989, 1990, 1991, 1992, and 1993, and 1996 for the cherry on top. He was the Wrestler of the Year in the Wrestling Observer newsletter from 1982, 83, 84, 85, 86, 89, 90, and 92. He was also inducted into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame in 1986. That is Ric Flair. And I had to cut some awards and accomplishments out because it got a bit redundant.
What do you think though? Like, I mean, like us talking here on this podcast, like, what do you actually think? I mean, take away like the awards, take away the like, what do you think Ric Flair's actual legacy is?
I think that it's hard work. I think that there's not a lot of people, especially wrestling fans, that come across now that understand what the territories were. We barely understood that as wrestling fans because we really, even though I know Joe did introduce me to NWA/WCW, the rest of us really kind of jumped in with WWF because it was everywhere. He was syndicated everywhere. We had no choice. And really, I'm glad I did because then I can come back later and appreciate the NWA WCW. But to do what he did in the territories, I don't know. There's nobody ever after him. So when people say that Shawn Michaels is the greatest in-ring performer of all time, I'm like, I mean, I'm not going to debate you in that sense because I don't feel that he ever even did close to the same thing. Now, did Shawn Michaels do a lot of stuff on the big stage, like WrestleMania performances? Yeah. Absolutely. But I think every day was WrestleMania for Flair in the sense that he had to go to these unknown territories. Who am I wrestling tonight? The Junkyard Dog? Okay, he could do 4 moves, but I got to fucking make him look like he's Hulk Hogan of the Carolinas. I got to make Butch Reed look like he's the Hulk Hogan of the Floridas. I got to make, so-and-so look like he's this. Yeah, and I don't think anybody can understand how much pressure that was, what they put on his back as being this international heavyweight champion. He even went to Japan as an heavyweight champion. I think that his legacy, Joe, it's hard to answer that question, and then he goes to WWF, the cartoon company, and he's top heel there, and Vince tributes him and pays tribute to the 60-minute man name, lets him win the Royal Rumble. All that stuff, and he wins 2 world titles there. God, man, I think his legacy is working, is putting his character over and being probably the greatest heel besides Vince McMahon as far as character is concerned in wrestling history. I think Flair is the greatest heel because he had to perform that. Vince could be interviews and say, tonight I'm going to make The Rock come out and fight you. And what a heel. Fuck you, Vince. And Vince was great. Don't get me wrong. But Flair was this working heel. Had to go into every territory and be this cocksucker you hated. And I'll get your women. I'm the best. I ride jets. You guys ride a car. Fucking losers. I'm in a jet. I can afford it. As a matter of fact, I shit out $100,000 yesterday. And I forgot it. It's in my shoes. As a matter of fact, I paid that for my shoes. And it was everything like he did. It was primitive as the 80s were. There was no internet. There was no cable. Oh, there was cable, but it wasn't like so widespread. Flair had to do all this regional work that made him like the greatest of all time.
Yeah, I mean, I 100%.
I think that's his legacy is hard work.
I mean, I don't think there's ever been somebody else that like contributed as much and was willing to sacrifice as much as Flair. You know, I'm like there. You know, Austin, Rock, Hogan obviously contributed as much, if not more, but they were also, like. I don't want to lose that guy.
It's not gonna work for me, brother.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, you want me to lose to so and so? Yeah, I don't want to do that. Michaels, I mean, don't even put Michaels in the same conversation. Michaels is shit. Like,
whoa,
like, I'm not losing to this person, whatever. Like, it's like
Jackknife 1, 2, 3.
That's the business. I mean, Flair, like in and out. I mean, like, like that to me is part of like as much as a part of his legacy is that like. As much as he like lived his character inside and outside the ring, his contribution to the ring, but his contribution to the business, like that, like he was like, I'll do anything for it. I think that's a huge.
In fact that he never wanted to retire. He literally never wanted to retire.
I mean,
he tried.
Couldn't do it. Detriment of his legacy because most people are like, why are you going to TNA? Well, I just, it's like that actually is fucking your legacy. This is fucking your. I mean, you could actually argue anything after Evolution fucked his legacy, or whatever. Like that, it was like, oh, just tarnish. But he's the guy who just wanted to do. He wanted to be in the limelight. He wanted to continue to be Ric Flair.
I think at the time, just to kind of piggyback off that, Joe, I think at the time people thought, oh, tarnish, but I don't think about it anymore. I don't think about those things that he had done that might have. That we talk about could tarnish the legacy, because when I think of Evolution, I work my way back and I think about what Flair has, you said, accomplished and contributed to wrestling, has spanned so much. in so many different federations and so many different audiences, from Japan to a cable syndicate in the South, to saying I can go on the big leagues. I can go to this national syndicate of these giants and still work and still make it in the land of the giants and the cartoon characters. And then to take that all the way into Evolution, into the early 2000s, and still maybe with a little bit of a confidence boost from Triple H, because he even said I had no confidence, and he still goes out there and tears the house down in a match, and they're like, "You're Ric Flair. That was great." He's like, "Was it good?" The whole time, to your point, was it good though? And I think he might have held himself to a standard. Now, once you get to the bar, the persona's back, right, and all the confidence is back, whether it's real or not. But he definitely had issues towards the end when he was still tearing the house down because it wasn't maybe to his standard. And I think that says a lot about the person that we're talking about. He went through so much in a realm of what wrestling used to be into what it is with Evolution, and even beyond that, he still adapted. He carries through longer than most people in multiple genres of wrestling, and was still relevant and still valuable. Yeah. I don't know how many people you can. I mean, even with Hogan, I don't think Hogan pushed as far as Flair did into other realms of the genres of wrestling.
I think I'll piggyback off you like you piggyback off Joe. I think during those years, it's not. I don't view it as tarnished. I think it's just like Joe said, contributing. And I think he just instead of looking at it as tarnishing it, he's contributing, because like that's what I was saying earlier, man. It's like I know like when you guys were in it when it was current, when Flair was currently fighting Rhodes and Sting and Steamboat.
But you caught Evolution at the height, right?
Well, I saw Flair, in 92. I think that was actually my first exposure to Ric Flair was 92. But then, obviously I became like how you guys were hardcore fans during that area. And not saying you're not now, but I'm just saying like that's when you guys went from casual to being hardcore fans, was early in that time. I went from being a casual as a kid, not really understanding, to being a hardcore into the Attitude Era. I knew who Flair was by then. I knew all about him. I knew, his legacy. So I just think it's so crazy. And I think it's kind of underappreciated, the fact of his run in the 2002, 2003, 2004, because it's like you look at his name and legacy, and like now he's bumping elbows with The Rock. He had a match with The Rock the few months after he fought Hogan on Live on Monday Night Raw. Sure. He had matches with Edge. He had matches with Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels, like all these guys. It's like, geez, man. Even if they're good matches. I think they're good matches.
And we didn't even touch the NWO legacy. Like he was part of the Monday Night Wars with the NWO versus the NWO.
So fire me! I'm already fired.
And I think
I'm already fired.
But to me, when I think Ric Flair, I still think NWA, WCW. I think that's his big. I think that's his.
Craig, bring us home.
Yeah, bring us home, baby.
I cannot say it better than I think what you guys have already said. Truly, I think just to me, he's Ric Flair. I think he's the greatest ambassador for the sport in the 80s and 90s than anyone that was not under McMahon's tutelage. And to maybe take it a little bit back from that, he's the greatest kind of wrestler that ever existed, and the guy that tried to keep the territories together when it was being swallowed apart by Vince McMahon and on the national front. And he was the last of best hope for what wrestling was in its golden years and kind of before it was completely swallowed up. And the biggest kind of all around performer of like look, gimmick, promo, charisma, technique, storytelling, psychology, what have you. So
he kept the Chase persona alive.
Actually, that's a really good statement. Like when you think about it, like he held on to anti-WWE, not because he was anti-Vince. I think Flair always knew that like Vince is a genius and like there's a lot of money there. Yeah. But I think he held on to that as long as he could until he finally said, I have to go.
Yes.
Like until, Turner just totally, after it bought WCW and it just collapsed and they put some Yahoo like Jim Herd in charge. Flair's finally like, I gotta go. I gotta go, man. I don't want to go. I always represented this side of it, but now I gotta go.
Yeah.
And then he went and he was the world champion in WWF. Like
it was great.
He is the last link to that territorial area. He did not want to let it die, but he had to finally realize it's been dead for a while. I gotta go. And then left.
And that's why
recharged himself and came back around.
With a tear in my eye. That's what he meant. He believed it 100%.
He's right.
Always remember.
It really is true. I know we're looking into it a little harder, but he really meant that with a tear in my eye, as in like I fought all through the late 70s and 80s for this motherfuckers. So I got to say with a tear in my eye, this is the greatest title. And he's holding it up going, God damn it. Like, I fought so hard for this not to be the greatest world title, but it is. Like, it is. He won. Vince won. Hogan won. Whatever you want to say. Like,
and
they
now
won.
Some of the greatest wrestling that we're seeing today, SmackDown with Roman, it's a pure chase. Exactly what.
Yeah. Now they have to. They're the only show in town. So what's the smart move to do? Let's do a chase of a heel. Let's chase the
chase. And Roman's
every time I see that, every time anybody does it, no matter what promotion, Impact, NWA, I see it like that's
New Japan.
He's in the Flair position. Yeah, New Japan.
Yeah, he's in the Flair position.
That heel's in the Flair.
You don't call it the heel chase position. You call it the Flair position because he personifies chase. Yeah. That's good stuff. I like it.
As the greatest of all time, Stone Cold said, Flair is the greatest in-ring performer ever.
There you go.
As the greatest of all time said, what you can do.
Oh, no. For audio fans, give us a listen Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, Stitcher,
get that trash out of here.
Or watch our videos on YouTube at our wrestling channel. On social media, give us a follow because we appreciate it. On Instagram or Twitter at O.W.P 2019.
It's Stone Cold
or on Facebook/Meta at Our Wrestling Podcast. Cuz, make sure you got all that in. This is Dave, Jess, Craig, Joe, Cuz with the O.W.P signing off. Have a good one.